You okay? Just waiting on
the green light.
the go.
Or red
Yep.
light.
Well, it is red, but then it takes a second to
Okay.
like connect, I guess, to the stream. Okay. No, it's Ashley. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We will not do what normal protocols are. This is a special called meeting. And at this time, I would ask, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Mayor and Board, I move we adopt the agenda.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, we will turn it over to our manager, Diane Seaford, for a presentation and discussion.
So each of you has a packet tonight. I wanted to take this time. Tonight, we're really just wanting to start the discussion on ARPA funding. We're required to put together a budget for that. We will be handling that from an accounting perspective in an entirely separate fund. And I'll be bringing to you some additional policies that we're required to have in place because it initiated with federal money. So Chase has been putting together those policies that are required as we start to spend this money. We'll be bringing those to you on Monday at your regular board meeting. But in preparation for that, I wanted us to start considering how we want to budget this money. And we have half of this money in place we've already received, $500,000, $37 or so, and we've already received. We'll receive the other half of it to total $1,073 sometime this year. I don't think we have an expectation on when that'll be exactly, but it is supposed to be in the calendar year 2022. So I want us to go ahead and start discussions on how we want to budget the entire amount. Tonight's presentation is designed to just help you start thinking through that. I'm not really expecting you to come back with any type of decisions tonight. If you choose to do so, you can, but I really just wanted to give you a way to think through the process or a way to think about some different things on how to spend the money before we get to the decision-making time and maybe set a meeting for when you want to look at it next again. So if we'll just start with the first page, talks about ideas and brainstorming. And the way we kind of came up with this is I've been hearing some of you kind of mention some projects that you might be interested in for the town. And I called the leadership team together and asked them to brainstorm with me as well and just say, you know, if you had an extra $1 million, what would you do with it? And so we spent a couple of hours just talking about needs within our departments, needs for the town in general that the leadership team felt were important. And so that's what you see on this first page. There's a small portion that's kind of unexpected expenses that we've incurred in 2022. For example, our fuel costs are almost $1 more this year than they were last year at this same time. So most of our departments are overspent on what we're not using really more gas, but the cost of it is more. So therefore, we're overspent on those line items. A couple of projects at the park have cost a little more than we expected them to. We want to finish the disc golf course and the interior of the new cabins that we've purchased. So we need a little bit more funding for that. And we purchased some new merchandise for resale at our events and at the Coyer Wilderness Park. That will replace itself as they're sold, but we ordered enough sizes and colors to get what we needed for an inventory. And so therefore, Jessica is overspent or will be overspent by the end of the year till she continues to buy resale items. So to replenish that fund, there's a little bit of a request for that.
Did you say in the first one to finish cabins?
We bought 2 new cabins were budgeted
Right.
this year. And when the cabins that we bought come as a kind of like a shell, and then
Right.
on the inside of them, we need to add furniture, not a lot of furniture, but a little bit of furniture. And we need, more importantly, we need to add water and insulation, and walls and flooring.
Okay.
From the board, I've heard that we may want to help out Passive Park a little bit, that we may want to put a message board out here that would just run current information to our citizens as they're driving by, that we might want to pave some roads, that we might want to do water and sewer infrastructure, and that we might want to consider replacement of the sidewalks in the uptown area. From public safety, they are in need of a new fire engine. They would like to look at funding a police position for 1 or 2 years, and during that time, they would anticipate that our tax base would increase at a level that we would be able to then support those positions moving forward. To help with our replacement cycle, the police department would also like to replace 2 vehicles and change some living quarters in the fire station. For Parks and Recreation, we are in need of pool repair prior to opening this year. We would like to look at having an architect do a design for our park area or our public area on Rice Street. That block that's there where the pool currently is all owned by the town, and we'd like to get a long-term plan for what we might want to include there. That could include things like a splash pad, a pavilion, a playground. And then we wanted to look at also doing something with the Beaver Pavilion and the community building that is over at that location. Public Works requested a leaf vac and a lateral camera.
What is the lateral camera?
It runs in the pipes.
For the lighting. Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure. We don't have one currently?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, if we have one, it is not what we need.
Okay.
So the cost estimates for that. Now to the fun part. So the completion of the disc golf course and the interior of the cabins would be $12,000. We need an increase in fuel cost across the board for $17,000. That is for everything but electric. Electric is excluded from ARPA funding. I should have told you this at the beginning, but we are doing something called a standard allowance. A standard allowance for ARPA spending is for towns and cities that received less than $10 million in funding. For those who receive more than $10 million, there's very specific regulations around what it can be spent on, and the reporting requirements for that are much more stringent. For those that receive less than $10 million, we are able to use the funds for anything that supports a general purpose, which basically means it's in the general fund, and in addition to that, it can be in the water and sewer fund, but it cannot be in the electric fund. And we will be using the funds, or I will be recommending that we use the funds for future purchases as opposed to paying for things that we've already spent. The requirements for that are significantly more stringent, and I would just recommend we have enough needs in the future that I don't think we need to get reimbursement for things we've done in the past, but that's just my recommendation. So as we move back through this again and we talk about where we're going, if we total all of these things up, everything that everybody has asked for, we come to a total of $3,948,000. We'll go back here and spend a little bit of time looking at the cost breakdowns for each of these requirements. The fuel cost, as we said, we think we'll spend $17,000 more for the remainder of the year, and we are pretty much at our budget at this point. Purchases for resale at Coyer Wilderness Park to get Jessica where she needs to be to finish out the year, about $14,000. And then that leaves us with $7,000 to round it off to a $50,000 number. I'd like to spend the next couple of days looking at our budget with Chase and determining if we have some other overages. That's the only action that I would like for y'all to think about tonight. If you're willing to let us fund some of our 2022 expenses and put us in a really good place for the end of the year, then I can bring you that budget amendment on Monday. So that's just something to consider tonight. The rest of it is really just to start discussion. As we look at our board ideas, passive park, $54,000, a message board up to $50,000. If we're going to pave roads or do water and sewer infrastructure, it would take the entire amount of our allotment. And sidewalks uptown, I think we could spend up to $100,000 there. Public safety, the fire engine, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that in a little bit, is $665,000. The police position for 1 or 2 years is $91,000 per year. 2 replacement vehicles at $46,000 each, and changes to the fire station living quarters would be between $30,000 and $50,000. Parks and Recreation, we think that we could spend up to $100,000 on the pool. We are currently getting bids on what's going to be required just to open it this year. The design for the block on Rice Street, we think that we can get someone to incorporate it, give us a couple of different options for a design for that entire block for $10,000. The splash pad we've estimated would be in the range somewhere around $90,000. The pavilion in that same area, if we go with a pavilion, would be around $125,000, and a playground $80,000. The Beaver Pavilion and Courts would be $45,000. That would repair the restrooms that are there and make that court where it can be used for multiple sports. And then $40,000 for the community building. That was previously called the Fire Hut, and we do think that it is in decent shape, but it would need some work done to the inside of it that could then be used for things like senior lunches and those type things. The Public Works leaf vac is $225,000, and the lateral camera is $10,000. As I mentioned, that brings us to a total of $3,948,000. Make sure, Natalie, will you give Natalie one of these, please? Thank you. So sometimes $1 million and how you spend it can be daunting. So I had some, as I was coming up with what my recommendation was going to be for you tonight, I tried to think through a couple of questions. And so I wanted to just propose those to you as you start your thought process on how you might want to spend the funds or what you might want to do with what I've recommended. So things to think about. Does the project impact the citizens directly? If so, how large is that number? What impact does this funding have on future annual budgets? What is most important to our citizens? Does it impact future growth and your vision for Landis? And do you want to fund one large project or multiple smaller large projects? As you start to think through that, I think that will help you look at what's been requested, at what some of the needs are, and you may have some more needs that we need to add to it. And if so, I would recommend that you maybe start voicing those tonight, because we want to look. We don't get this opportunity probably at once, and I don't want to seem flip about this, but $1 million seems like a lot of money to me and you individually. That is a tremendous amount of money, and for our town, it will have a big impact. But where we put that money maybe has a bigger impact or can go further in some areas than it can in others. Just because some things cost so much, to do a little bit, we won't get very far. So those are things to think about. I mean, just like with the water and sewer infrastructure and with the street paving, we would have to spend all of it to make any progress at all, and it still would probably be minimal, just because those projects are so cost prohibitive. So just something to think about as you start looking through this. The next page has my recommendations on it, and I thought that maybe if I made a recommendation for you, it would give you somewhere to start. And you could say, oh, we don't like that at all, take it off. Or we like that, but we don't want to spend that much on it. Or we want to do more there. Or we want to add this and take that off. It would at least give us a skeleton of where to start. So the first section is where we talked about our 2022 unexpected fund shortages. And I've requested $50,000 there to put us in a really good place for the end of the year. I'm hopeful our revenues are coming in pretty good, and I'm hopeful that that will also allow us at the end of the year to have revenues exceeding our expenditures in a position that we'll be able to increase our fund balance slightly. Your board ideas, from those, I selected the passive park contribution, the message board, and a reduction for sidewalks to $50,000. So following this page, I have a little bit of justification for why I went that way. I think that the passive park contribution shows support from the town for the vision of an uptown gathering place for our citizens and advances the ability of that project to continue to move forward. The message board in front of Town Hall facilitates us improving communication with our citizens. That's something we've really been trying to do, is continue to find ways to communicate with all of our citizens. A lot of our citizens are on social media, and that's a good platform. But if they're not on social media, they're probably either driving or walking by Town Hall at some point during their week. And if we can post upcoming events and important messages that might be happening around town on a message board, then that's one more way to reach those citizens. The sidewalks uptown enhance our current infrastructure, and we believe that they are currently in disrepair or in a state that is causing them to maybe slope in the wrong direction, and it's impacting some of our infrastructure there. So I think that would be a good use to help those businesses in that area to improve. You'll notice that I did not select water and sewer and paving, and the reason for that is we are currently seeking some additional funding for water and sewer, but I think will make a huge difference. And I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I think we have a couple of different avenues for some additional funding at a state level there that will allow us to take care of our water and sewer needs. If something happens and we don't get that money, there is always an opportunity. This is just like our annual budget. We can go back and change it. My concern with the street paving is that $1 million, again, while it's a lot of money, if we have to pave the road on our own, will not go very far at all. And if we have to wait on the state, we have to have this money, the project completed and spent and paid for by 2026. And that seems like a long time away. But in state terms, that's not a long time away. You'll remember I came to you probably, I don't know if it was last year or year before last, with a paving program to start looking at getting with DOT and getting on their bid list so that we could make the most of the funds we have. And on Monday, I'll be bringing you an update on that. But they let that bid back in the fall. They're supposed to start it sometime in March, but we're part of a project that's going to run from March of this year to sometime in 2023. Well, if we take this money and try and get on the next bid program, that next bid program might not be until 2023, and then they don't let it until the fall, and then they don't start it until 2024. And if we're at the end of it, we're going to be pushing it to get it paid for before we run out of time with this money. So I'm a little bit anxious to spend our money on that. I'm also going to give you at our next board meeting an update on so that the citizens will know which of our streets we're responsible for as a town and which ones are DOT roads. I know that some of our streets are in bad shape, and we do have a plan to get those paved and repaired. But a lot of our streets that we think are in really bad shape are not our streets at all. They're DOT streets. So I'll be talking with you about that in more detail on Monday so that our citizens can get a good idea for maybe they need to reach out to their state and ask that, that some of our main roads be on their list for repaving. That covers our board ideas. Are there any other board ideas that I maybe haven't heard or missed and we would like to include?
You were going through your recommendations. Mm-hmm. You didn't get all the way through?
No, I just wanted to see if you guys have any other recommendations.
You're stopping there.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
No, I'm hopping around a little bit.
No,
I apologize.
you're fine.
But while we're here talking about the board ideas, does anybody have anything else that we need to at least write down on our schedule to consider in our next meeting?
I just have a question in general. If we did sidewalks, would we do one side and not the other because of the construction on the passive park side, and then possibly do that like once it's finished?
Well,
I'm just throwing that out there just for conversation.
Quite honestly, I think the need is greater on the side that's not passive park.
Right, I agree.
Because it's impacting those structures. And we have not had an opportunity yet to go out and see exactly what those costs look like. This is strictly just an estimate.
Right.
So a lot of it would depend on where that estimate comes in, but I think my recommendation would be that we start on the side where most of our businesses are.
Okay.
So on the third page of cost estimates, that's just a general estimation of what you and/or Public Works feel like the sidewalks, $100,000 would cost.
That's a rough estimate.
And then your
my recommendation is to start with 50.
Okay.
Because if that will do one side,
It's not that it's been bidded.
No.
You just conservatively
that
think
area-
it's going to take $100,000 to do something.
that's just a rough estimate. It's a general. It's actually if it's going to err on any side, I don't think it will cost $100,000, especially not to do just one side. And that's part of the reason I pared it down to $50,000, because that maybe will do one side. That's really the only. Most everything else on here we have a pretty good idea about.
Right.
We've been able to get some estimates for.
Right.
But that's not something that we've reached out to a contractor yet. And again, it's something that if that's something you feel really strongly about and want to make sure we do, then we can get those bids and then, or get someone to at least come up and give us a better estimate. And then we can take from another area to fund that if that's one of your top priorities.
Right.
So public safety. Public safety, I'm recommending that we spend $300,000 on a fire engine. And that we, this is, again, a starting place for this discussion, and as we get deeper into it, I can give you more information. But the fire department presented to me a plan, a long-range plan for what they would like to do for the next 5, 10, 15 years as far as their equipment replacement goes. And part of this involves selling off. So we will sell off some of our equipment. The total cost for the engine is $780,000. Am I right on that? 780? I think is what we came up with. Somewhere around 780. You'll notice that on the front page, or on the page with our cost estimates, we had 665. The difference in the 780 and the 665 comes from selling off some of our existing equipment.
Can you tell us what that would be? Or what what was proposed to sell? I know you don't know the cost of what they would go for.
Well, actually, I do have an
okay.
estimate. I didn't want, because we have limited time tonight, I just wanted this to be an opportunity to start thinking through that. I can send you those,
Okay.
that whole packet if you'd like with that presentation. But I just wanted to talk to you tonight about an option to purchase a fire engine if you are interested in it.
So say that first sentence one more time. You said the total cost of an engine was
$780.
But in
All right. So
in
then
the-
there's 126 that has been surplus, which is why it's 665.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then I would recommend that we fund 300,000 of that with ARPA funds, and then that we borrow the additional 365. If we did that for 8 years at 4%, that would be approximately $54,000 a year. We are currently, in our run rate, we have about $111,000 in furniture and equipment for the fire department. We have just finished replacing our SCBA's. I think that's the breathing apparatuses and tanks. So we are in good shape on those. That's been a priority for the last couple of years. So if we take some of that money and make a debt payment with it for 8 years, then that will position us for the next time that we need to buy another engine. So again, these are high-level bullet points for you to just start discussion on. In the interim, I'll get you more information, and we'll be prepared for our next meeting where we have deeper discussions. But I wanted to give you just some things to think about and consider. Start thinking about what you think your priorities are, both individually and as a board. Are there any questions on the public safety piece for right now? Okay.
I have questions, but they'll be in general tab, so.
Okay. All right. So Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation comes up. I am recommending that we fund $271,000. If you add those items up, they come up to about, I think, $400,000, somewhere around there. But we are currently budgeting in our, like this year, we budgeted $60-some thousand to do a playground and to do 2 new cabins and some other things at the park. So if we take that money and then we apply for some grants as well, and we do some of these projects in a phased-in approach, then I think we can come up with what we need to fund these projects. We won't have a complete idea of how much the costs are going to be until we get an architect to do a design for the block on Rice Street. With that said, we do have an idea of kind of what things will cost based on what we've just spent on a playground. And Jessica's done some research on splash pads and some research on the community building and the pavilion and those type things. So I think that this allows us to have an opportunity to get started on really advancing our Parks and Rec program, and puts us in a good position to really fund all of that. So if we look at our Parks and Recreation, I think that this has the opportunity to reach the largest group of people in our town. The things that we're proposing address all different ages. The block on Rice Street that we could develop would obviously target our younger families and our children. And then if we put a pavilion in there that would be used for our farmers market and other town events, that would also allow us to reach maybe an older population. If we look at taking the old fire hut and turning it into a community center, it gives us an opportunity to reach our seniors, a place for them to meet and have their senior lunches. It also allows us to have more facilities, one that's indoors that folks can rent for birthday parties and those type things. I think that upgrading and expanding our recreational program attracts both new residents and new businesses. It positions us, it makes a community that is alive and makes it where people want to come here and be a part of it. And that Rice location is perfect for that. It really gives us, it's almost central in town, and it really sets an opportunity for us to really showcase that we are progressive and moving forward, and that we care about having young families here. The Public Works request is for a leaf vac. And you might think this really doesn't impact all those people, but when you have fall in this town, it impacts every household here. And this year, we had problems with our leaf machine. Once again, I hate to blame everything on our old administration, but it's easier to do that. The current leaf machine that we have, quite honestly, is not that old. But when it was purchased as a demonstration model, which meant it had been used by a lot of towns with maybe people that knew how to use it and maybe people that didn't know how to use it. It's kind of like test driving a vehicle. And we had a number of problems with it this year, and the parts could not be found, so we had to patch together a couple of old leaf machines, and we had to reach out to our neighbors in China Grove, and they were kind enough to let us borrow one of theirs. But with a new leaf machine, it would set Public Works up to be able to be more efficient. The new machine would not require as many folks to operate it, and it would really cut down on our dust. It's designed to not have the same level of openness to it that our current model has, where if it's dry and you pull up the leaves, dust goes everywhere. Our workers are covered in it, and people are breathing it everywhere. And with this machine, that would not happen.
So will we keep the current leaf machine as a second one?
Yes, the current leaf machine would become the backup.
And what's the turnaround if we went that direction? I mean, is it a year out to get a leaf machine, or?
I don't know that answer. I'll have to check with Joe on that. I'll find out for you. I do think that they have a few of those. I don't think.
Hold on one second. Can you move your microphone over so she can?
I don't think it has the chips in it that some of our vehicles and stuff have. So I think we'll be able to. Get it in a more reasonable time. I wanted to go back for just a minute to public safety and talk for a few minutes.
Could we get one? That's what she was asking.
The question that Alderwoman Sells had, just so I can repeat that for anyone who might have a hearing impairment, Alderwoman Sells had asked how quickly we could receive the leaf machine if we ordered it. And the answer to that was, I don't know, but I will find out. I don't think it will have the same lead time that some of our automobiles have, because I don't think the technology in it requires some of the chips that are currently holding up automobiles.
Thank you.
I wanted to go back and revisit public safety for a minute, because I think it's really important for us to understand a couple of things there that were requested that I didn't include in my recommendation. I think that we can address the police portion of their request in an annual budget process, whether, depending on how you want to handle that. It concerns me to make a position, to fund a position with ARPA money that we then have to continue funding. And the justification for that was valid in that our tax base is growing. But I would feel better about finding a way to support that position, if you so choose to do so, with our current annual funding level. And the same is kind of true for our cars. I actually encouraged our folks to think about their equipment replacements, and if we could get ahead on those, to do that. But Chase and I have been talking about it, and he is going to work on a full replacement cycle for all of our vehicles across town. And we'll be bringing that to you in the upcoming months as we do our budget process, that allow us to start allocating a certain amount of money per year just for replacement vehicles in general. And then that would rotate between departments as to how we replace those. So I'd like to look at that as a whole, and I think we can do that as well as part of our annual process. So again, this is a lot to throw at you. And there's a lot to consider when you start thinking about how you want to spend the money. I just wanted to give you some things to think about. These are my recommendations. Ultimately, it's your decision how we spend this money. It's the town's budget, and you have a lot to think about on what you think is the best way to go about appropriating it. But I thought maybe this structure would give you an opportunity to at least have some ideas in general, start your conversation around it. we have about 20 minutes before our planning board meeting tonight in this same room. So if you have any comments or questions, I may not have the answer yet, but I'll get it for you. And if you want to think about when you might want to meet next, or if you have anything again that you want to add.
Do we need to make some kind of, recommendation tonight, but you don't want to do that
The
tonight?
only thing that I need tonight is I would like, if you will, to consider letting us use $50,000
Yes.
for the rest of this year's budget.
Right. I guess for me, since this is live and people are going to watch it and they may ask us questions, do you have a roundabout, maybe 2 or 3 items that would be gone from public safety? Because I know they're going to ask us that. Like what they would sell off to make up that $1,100, I mean, 111, just so that they hear it and we're not speculating, I guess is my question.
Okay.
Or what, I guess if there's 7 different things they could sell, give us 3 or 4 so that people hear it and it's not speculation.
Okay. Zach is here tonight. He is our public safety director. So I'm going to let you correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't know the numbers for these engines. We would be looking at selling off the engine that does not have heat or air. I don't know which engine that is. We would be looking at selling off the brush truck. And we would be looking at selling off the I guess it's called an emergency response vehicle. Is that correct? I'm killing it. You want to come up here? I apologize. I didn't realize we were going to get to this level of detail.
Well, I think that people are going to ask us and I don't know the answer. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, so we've had some initial recommendations, and some of the things are recommended that we could consolidate down with the purchase of a new truck. We could sell engine 442, which is our 1986 Seagrave open cab engine that we house here. We also have a brush truck, brush 447, a Squad 58, and an engine 581, which is housed across the street at engine 58. Consolidating all of those, we would take that surplus sales, and that's where we forecast potentially up to $120,000, which could be used as part of a new purchase. That is part of a greater plan that we have as far as the long-term look of the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That way, if, you know,
That engine 581, what's the brand on that one? Is that the
Engine 581 is the Freightliner.
Freightliner?
Correct. And so what we'd be doing is forecasting a purchase of a wet rescue to take the abilities of the apparatus we would be looking to consolidate.
okay.
And one of those vehicles currently refills our breathing apparatus tanks. And so that's going to mean that we're going to need to purchase one of those to do in-house as opposed to having it on a moving vehicle. So what we expect to receive when we surplus these is greater than the $121,000, but $50,000 of that would go to purchase an in-house
Oh, okay.
device to refill those tanks.
Okay.
And again, we have a detailed, the fire department spent a lot of time with me and Chase giving us an overview of their vision for where they'd like to go. And I have that information. I just was going to go into that with you as we got a little bit further down the pipeline. But I'll be glad to email that to you and make sure you're fully prepared for any questions you might get.
So I have just a few additional questions as well.
Hopefully, I'll be
relates-
better prepared for
No, I
those.
think this is fine. This is all dialogue, which I think is a great opportunity for us as the governing board, as well as administration and citizens to have involvement in one, where do we spend this money? Where does it impact the most of our population, and where can we get maximum utilization and credit for it in a manner that will improve future budgets? So in light of that, do you like the spray of allocation where we're hitting multiple departments within the town versus allocating all to just public safety or all to public works? Do you think that's equitable and worthy, or should we? Will it impact the future budgets of the town better to maybe funnel to more one or two departments versus the majority of them?
Right,
What are your thoughts about that? Just in general.
right. Well,
I have to say, I mean, there's nothing that there's nothing that I could disagree with. In fact, my second point is going to be, if we don't have a lateral camera with our infrastructure in the state that it's in, I think we very much need a lateral camera tomorrow.
well,
So add that $10,000 in somewhere.
well,
somewhere
the lateral
to Public
camera,
Works.
the lateral camera is $10,000. So in my mind, that was something that we
That
could
could be
address with, with annual money, because it's not a significant purchase. It's $10,000. And if they're in dire straits for a lateral camera, we can find a way to get that out of the $50,000 that you're considering for the remainder of this year. So certainly we're going to get them those small things that they absolutely need. In my mind, I liked spreading it out because then it allows us to target multiple areas of our community. It gives us an opportunity to meet the needs of a lot of people, and do a little something for everybody. Not necessarily every department, but some people might not be recreation minded. But at the same time, they might drive by and see a message board every week. And some people might not be recreation minded, but they really care about getting their leaves picked up. And if they get picked up in half the time that it took this year, that would be a big improvement. If they got picked up in double time or triple time, that would be even better. So, I think it also doesn't put a detriment of debt on any one department either. The only place we would be adding debt would be potentially with a fire truck. And you could decide that you thought it was better used to take all of this money and buy a fire truck. That's certainly your prerogative. I just felt like while the fire truck is a very big purchase, this money allows us to take some of that burden off of our general fund annual budget, but yet it still holds us somewhat accountable to that budget by causing us to have a little bit of debt that makes us think about it every month when we pay for it, and then positions us, because 8 or 10 years down the road, the truck that we have right now that will be our backup truck is going to be 8 or 10 years older, and it's going to be time to do something with it. And then we've been making those payments so that we're now ready to think about doing something with the next truck that has to be replaced. But it's not so much debt that it puts a burden on that department. And I think that there will be opportunities for Parks and Recreation, maybe even at a state level, for us to qualify for some additional grants that come even maybe at a state level from ARPA that haven't been passed on to the local level yet. And I think that we will have some increases in our tax revenue from our growth from where our people are moving in and our businesses are coming, and that all can be somewhat funneled toward recreation to help cover that difference there. I don't really think we're going to need to do debt there to pay for the rest of that, to maybe do something really nice over here on Rice Street. And I think it positions us to support Passive Park and look at also doing something on this side up near downtown or uptown area.
So I think just my observation and reading over the efforts that have been put forth from the departments and your administration to us, suffice to say, I think you encompass everything that I would want to add or be a part of in the board ideas, as well as within the other departments. I think it overreaches to span to reach as many citizens as it can reach, which is one of the key components of the utilization of these funds. In reading some case studies recently of surrounding neighboring municipalities having success with their funds, I would like to support an additional meeting, discussions with all of us, culminating with a community meeting to hear what the community wants, because obviously your decisions are going to be based on our vision. Our vision should be based off that of
Absolutely.
our citizens. So without our citizens vocalizing what they see, I don't know that we're actually properly imparting our vision to our administration. So I would like to see community meetings, have a setting for that as well, in a format as citizen comments, to get input. And if they come, great, and if not, it's on them. But at least our doors would be open.
Okay. Any,
So thank you. That's my comments. If something weren't in here that I was thinking about, I would speak more. But it encompasses,
well, good.
I think, the major components of what we've been lacking for a long time. And fortunately, we have the resources. We have to just allocate it and where we see the best.
Well-
I look forward that a lot of this is for some capital outlay that will diminish or help improve future budgets for each department as well. So,
Well, and I would encourage any of you that think of something later after you leave here, just call me or send me an email, and we'll get it included for our next discussion. Are there any other comments for tonight?
I would like to say I agree with Ashley on that, to get the citizens involved, because in the end, it's their money.
It is, that's
You know,
right.
It's their money. There's a lot of information here to intake, look at, and think about. I got a lot of questions, but my number one question tonight, before we do anything to any sidewalks, been up there, looked at them. Me and Meredith walked around, looked at them. They're not pretty. There's some issues, but I don't think the town owns those sidewalks.
Okay.
I think the property line is the back of the curb. Actually, some points it's out in the street. So I don't think the town actually owns those sidewalks.
Oh, okay.
So that's something we may need to.
We need to check into
We
that.
may need to get that surveyed and checked out before we spend anything, get any estimates or anything like that on that.
Thank you. I'll check into that.
Hey, we need to make a motion right fast, Mr. Stewart. Sorry.
I walked the sidewalks twice Monday when it was raining. There's only one store up there that had a little puddle in front of it. And that's because the storefront that was replaced in that building wasn't installed properly. It's the only one that's not above the threshold where water would be a problem.
Okay.
All the rest of them, they're that much higher than the. And
Okay.
$5,000 to have those sidewalks painted some
Right.
years ago, and it would destroy all that.
I think they stamped them, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And these are, I just want you to make this clear, these are rough estimates of the cost. So when you say a message board, it would be 50,000. It could be less.
Yeah.
But you were going with the higher amount?
Yes, I
assume?
tried to err on the
Side of
high
caution.
side, so we
Okay.
may have some money left.
But
Okay.
What it looked to me like was if we do something with that particular place, the water's still gonna run in that place.
Right.
The store has to be raised.
Okay. Do I have a motion to allocate $50,000 towards fund unexpected 2020 expenses? Do I have
So
a
moved.
motion? Do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So before we close this out, would you like to either set a community meeting date or
Yes.
a next meeting for you? Would you like to do the community meeting next?
Yes.
I
Okay.
think we could have some more board discussion on top of or within the same setting as a community meeting.
Okay, that's a good idea.
We
I think
could maybe
community,
go
I think
first,
community involvement,
and then us.
yeah,
after.
community discussion could spark
Yeah, sure.
additional board level discussions, at which point could end in a motion and a decision or not.
Okay,
Would you want more definite pricing by then on items, or just keep it general?
Keep it on the high side.
Okay,
Go
okay.
high and then it comes in low, everybody will be happy.
Okay.
Right.
All right. At this time, before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I would like to let you know that immediately following this meeting, the planning board will be holding their monthly meeting. A quorum of board members may be present at this meeting. However, no action will be taken by the governing board. At this time, do I have a motion to adjourn?
We're gonna set a
Wait
date
a
for
minute,
this
we gotta
next
set a
meeting.
date.
Oh,
for the next
I didn't think I thought you were just
Yeah.
going to get back with us.
No, we're
I don't
gonna
have
set a
my
date.
calendar.
Okay. We can set if you can either set it tonight, or we can talk about it Monday and set it at Monday's meeting.
Let's talk about it between now and then, set it Monday.
Okay.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't have
Okay.
my stuff in here.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
will now turn it over to the planning board.